I thank him for his work as the ranking member on budget. Mr. Speaker, I'm about to say something that the American people don't want to hear. The swamp is back. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
Gentleman's correct. Members, let's give everybody a courtesy, please. I know it's late. Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. The swamp is back. Every day since January 20th, Democrats have sided with their special interest allies and ignored the real needs of the American people. The result is the bill before us today, or should I say tomorrow. Congress won't actually vote on this bill till about 2 a.m. Saturday morning. Why? Because, Mr. Speaker, Democrats are so embarrassed by all the non-COVID waste in this bill that they are jamming it through in the dead of night. We ran the amount of money that actually goes to defeating the virus is less than 9%. Less than 9%. So don't call it a rescue bill. Don't call it a relief bill. If you are a friend of the Speaker, you do pretty well under this bill. But for the American people, it is a loser. Let's consider Medicare. Tonight, CBO confirmed that this bill will cause $36 billion in cuts to Medicare starting this year. If you vote for this bill, I want you to go back to your district. Look the seniors in the eye. Look at the hospitals, those who have been working night and day, and tell them why you voted to cut their health benefits. Or consider the blue state bailout. This bill calls for states and local governments to receive $350 billion. Most states are not in financial distress. Nearly half saw an increase in their revenue last year. And some, even including my home state of California, the Speaker's as well, actually has a budget surplus. But none of that money is tied to reopening. Or consider elite institutions, Harvard and others. This bill calls for them to receive hundreds of millions of dollars. But Harvard already has a $40 billion endowment. Compare that to K through 12 education. This bill allocates only $6 billion to help reopen American schools in fiscal year 2021. More than 2/3 of the education funding would not be spent until 2023 or later. Almost every one of this bill's 592 pages includes a liberal pipe dream that predates the pandemic. Now let's check the fine print. On page 97, for those of you who've not read it, it hands out health care subsidies to illegal immigrants. On page 347, it fast-tracks $1.5 billion to Amtrak. Now, Amtrak has $1.5 billion from the last package they haven't even spent. On page 306, it gives federal employees up to an extra $21,000 to help cope with virtual schooling. Let me read that so every American understands. If you are a federal employee, you get an extra $21,000 to cope with virtual schooling. Because a lot of federal employees are going to vote for this bill tonight. But if you are one of the millions of parents outside of Washington, outside of the swamp, who are struggling through school closures, including the 1 million mothers who had to quit their jobs to take care of their kids at home with school, and the fathers that quit, you are ignored. And on page 358, it funnels, well, earlier it funneled less, just a little over $100 million, but last night the Rules Committee was able to add more, up to $140 million for a subway tunnel near Speaker Pelosi's district. When you add it all up, the size of this payoff is jaw-dropping. $1.9 trillion in new spending. It is the single most expensive spending bill ever. But will it help people get back to work? No. Will it help students get back in the classroom immediately? No. Will it help get vaccines to those who want it? The answer is no. It doesn't spend a third of the entire cost of the bill for another 2 years, undermining the claim that this bill is so urgent that this money won't be spent for another 2 years. It doesn't have any guardrails to protect against fraud, which has already cost taxpayers tens of billions of dollars, including especially in California. It just throws out money without accountability, even though we are over $1 trillion unspent from the last bill. President Biden promised unity, but Democrats are delivering a one-party rule. Mr. Speaker, based on the facts, the Democrat spending bill is too costly, too corrupt, and just too liberal for this country. To my colleagues who say this bill is bold, I say it's bloated. To those who say it's urgent, I say it's unfocused. To those who say it is popular, I say it is entirely partisan and has the wrong priorities. Republicans will support whatever is needed to get America back to work, back to school, and back to health. After 12 months of struggling, suffering, and sacrificing, that's what Americans want, what they need and what they deserve. That's why Republicans will introduce a motion to recommit, to bolster the resources of families can access to help their children cope with the emotional stress of school closures. And it won't be for parents who just work for the federal government. It'll be for all American parents. In every single district, if you watch, the anxiety, the fear for children have risen. To the 3 million children that now mark a year that they haven't been in the classroom. Our proposal would shift the $140 million from Speaker Pelosi's subway to grants that would be used for mental health services for children. It puts children first, not the swamp. Democrats have conveniently ignored the education and mental health crisis affecting our children, but failing to address it is unacceptable. Families deserve answers. Tonight they will finally get it. Our colleagues, it's a very clear and concise question you have before you. If you vote for the bill, you're cutting Medicare. You're cutting your hospitals. You're cutting your health providers with your vote. If you vote against the motion to recommit what you changed, you are picking $140 million that you just added to last night to a subway tunnel just outside of the Speaker's district. So who do you pick? All American parents to give them the grants and the resources they need to cope with their children's anxiety, the rise of suicide, and the mental health? Or do you think that subway is really appropriate right here, right now? Make a decision. Is the swamp back, or the hardworking American taxpayers come first? It's an easy question. It's easy for me to decide, and I think it's easy for America to decide as well. I yield back.
Members are...
Just with respect to the vaccine, I know you have called for a regular order to be restored, yet some members still have not gotten vaccinated or don't want to, and especially now that the former president has come out saying people should get vaccinated, will you tell your members to do the same?
Yeah, I've always told my members to do the same. I've spoken to the doctor. Approximately 75% of the members have been vaccinated. That's probably more than the number that shows up to vote in person. It's roughly 30 to 40 of the members who who have the antibodies who got COVID. If you were a impeachment manager from the House and you went to the Senate, you didn't have to wear a mask on the floor in the Senate. The Senate, I would guess, average age is higher than the House. The Speaker or the medical doctor allowed people who had COVID to actually come into the chambers on the day to vote for Speaker. The Speaker said that she was instituting proxy voting just because of on a limited basis for COVID. The members have to sign a document, the reason why they can't be there. I think we're at a different point in time when those thresholds came, and I think we're at a higher threshold by our vaccination. I think we should change the duration of the votes. I think the proxies should end. I think we should go back to working in committee. I think bills should actually come through committee before they come to the floor. And I asked her in a letter last week, what is her plan and when is the timeline for that? Because with every given day, so what's that number then? I mean, well, is that her plan? Have we thought of this? Why shouldn't we plan for when we can go? Should we take down the wall around the Capitol? Should it be easier for a citizen to visit the Capitol than for an illegal person to come across the border? I mean, these are simple questions that if you're a Speaker of the House, you should have a plan. If she can't come up with a plan, I'll provide a plan. Every single day, the percentage goes higher for who's vaccinated on the floor. Why can the Senate, when they speak with not around, not wear a mask? Why can the CDC now tell us as a family unit we can come together without a mask, but you can't do that on the floor of the House, even though more of us are vaccinated than probably the majority of the United States? And why were we told to vaccinate early then? I mean, I think if we're essential, we should work, and it should be essential that we do our work. So my only question to her is, what's the plan to do that? And I would think, as Speaker, you would plan those things. Do you wake up one day and say, oh, now is enough? That's my only question. Yes, sir.
Following on her question, if you're essential, as a member of Congress
Yes.
presumably should be, shouldn't you also just get vaccinated, just be able to allow everyone to do their jobs here?
I don't know if I understand it. Say it again.
If you're essential as a member of Congress, an
Yeah.
essential worker,
Yeah.
shouldn't that also indicate that you should get vaccinated as soon as possible to allow things to get back to normal as quickly as possible, especially on the floor?
Are people not? I mean, what's the premise of your question?
There seem to be, you say there are 75% people members vaccinated.
Probably higher by today.
Presumably some of those are voluntarily not vaccinated.
Yeah, there are a number of members, when I ask them, not that they won't get vaccinated, but they feel that they shouldn't get vaccinated until their community gets vaccinated. That's a personal choice. I respect that. There are members who haven't been vaccinated because they had COVID, because they can't get the vaccination yet. But I think all of you would say, if we're at 75 last week, we're probably higher today. That's a pretty high number. You're all sitting together. I bet there's not 75% of you have been vaccinated. You're showing up for work. You're not proxying in your work, are you?
This is my first day here in 2 weeks.
But you wore a matching mask with your shirt, so you're pretty impressive. I like that. Looks good. All right. Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
To the amendments and to this bill. Mr. Speaker, earlier today, the Speaker of the House said that people who are fully vaccinated but don't support wearing a mask are morons. She went on to say that the House should follow the science. Madam Speaker, you don't know the facts nor the science, so let's talk about it. The Speaker is referring to the CDC current recommendation. I just left speaking with Dr. Monahan from the House. He said he used the CDC recommendation on a report that hasn't been printed yet. He did not know that the report is based upon India about a vaccine that's not approved in America. And now he did not know that it didn't even pass peer review. That's why vaccinated people in this House now have to wear a mask. There is no science. But I guess the Speaker must have not known that. Why wouldn't the Speaker know the facts? Do you know what frustrates Americans the most? Hypocrisy. They hate the idea that you tell people, get vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. First they tell us, don't wear a mask, wear 2 masks, then they take the mask off. They said if Americans got vaccinated, we'd get our lives back. And we did, thanks to Operation Warp Speed and the past administration. But what they also hate about hypocrisy is when you break your own rules. It's kind of like telling America you can't go get your hair cut. But you get caught on camera because you do it. Or you tell people you can't go out to dinner, but in my same state, the state that the individual got the haircut, that governor went out to dinner. A lot of people. Today, the Speaker, who didn't know her own science and said names to people, broke her own rules. Twice today I saw the Speaker in a crowded room without a mask, less than 24 hours after imposing the mask mandate, which again is not based upon a study. It's based upon a study in India, based upon a vaccine that isn't approved in America. It didn't pass peer review. Could this be a plan to try to keep our schools closed? And worst of all, this administration and now this House has broken the country's trust. One size fits all. You know, if you read the CDC recommendation, it said you only should wear the mask for the hot spots. I'm sure the gentlemen on the other side know which states and which cities are hot spots, because those are the facts. You could see the facts. You could read the facts. You could understand the facts. So what is Washington? The vaccination rate for the members of Congress is over 85%. And as of today, the transmission rate on the Capitol campus is less than 1%. Well, the facts would tell us this isn't a hot spot, so the CDC recommendation doesn't apply to us. Meanwhile, the hospitalization rate for the people who are vaccinated are 0.003. As Washington Post columnist Henry Olson points out, you are more likely to get struck by lightning than be hospitalized with the vaccine. Must be a stormy day in the House. You know what's interesting? We serve in this chamber, we represent our districts, and we have senators who represent our states just down the hall. The science based upon the Speaker of this House changes somewhere around the rotunda. You see, you have to wear your mask here, otherwise you're fined, because that's what government should do. They should punish people. You get vaccinated. But if you walk across the hall, you get somewhere around the rotunda, you don't have to wear it anymore. Somehow the science is different. You know, the one thing we do know about COVID, it affects older people different than younger. Facts tell us people who serve in the Senate, on average, are older than the people in the House. But the science and the health over there is different than in here. It's interesting, too, because I remember a short time ago when we had the mask mandate during one of the impeachments the Democrats brought up. The managers wore their mask here, but as they walked to the Senate, they were able to take them off. I'm not quite sure of how much of COVID lives on this side of the building. That must be science. That must be what the Speaker was talking about. The past administration worked hard for Operation Warp Speed. I'm proud of the fact of what we voted for. When we brought bills up on this floor that talked about working towards a vaccine, that's where the money went. Not the trillions of dollars wasted that now gave us inflation. Americans want to get back to work, back to school, and back to health. But we now have a majority that doesn't want to base anything on science. They want to base something on a report that's not printed, that can't pass peer review, based upon a country of India, that based upon a vaccine that's not even improved in America. Because the facts and the science of the vaccines in America work. They're effective. They're free. I got a vaccine in December. I recommend all Americans get a vaccine. It's a concern we all have. We go every day trying to get more people vaccinated. What do you think the message is today? Well, those who run this side of this building believe now if you're vaccinated, you have to wear a mask, even though the science doesn't say you should. I'm not sure how many more people are going to rush to get vaccinated. But it's just like their philosophy. They want to mandate, they want to impose. They want to tell you when you can go to school, when you can eat. You know what they're going to do if you walk into this building without a mask? They're going to charge you $500. Why? Because they got the power to do it. You walk across the hall, not quite sure where they morph into a different science. You don't have to. Mark my words, this is just the beginning. In a few weeks, schools are supposed to open again. We know what the science says about COVID with children. I think you're going to start seeing new reports. They won't be printed, but they'll try to keep the schools closed. Maybe if I whisper, the president will listen. He tries it. Then they'll try to shut our businesses down one more time. Operation Warp Speed provided vaccines that were tested, that work, that are effective. The study, the science prove it so. The hospitalization rates proves it so. I don't know of one person in this chamber that's going to get struck by lightning today. But I do know, even though the odds are better you get struck by lightning than being hospitalized if you're vaccinated, we're all going to have to wear a mask or we have to pay $500. I don't know, the gentleman over there is going to run for the Senate. Maybe he wants to do that so he doesn't have to wear a mask. The science over there is better. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington reserves.
Reserve.
It should compel every elected official to take action and say enough is enough. But Democrats have been conveniently avoiding the issue. Republicans will no longer ignore the mental health of our children. So I'd like to announce today House Republicans will be introducing a motion to recommit that will bolster the resources families can access to help their children cope with the emotional effects of school closures. To do that, our proposal would shift the first $100 million and now the extra $40 million that was added overnight that was allocated to Nancy Pelosi's subway to grants that would be used for mental health for children. So what the motion to commit will do, in the earlier bill, Nancy Pelosi put $100 million into building a subway just outside her district for Silicon Valley. Last night, she added another $40 million to that in Rules Committee. We think the mental health of the children, because school closures are more important and should be in this bill. Today, Democrats will have to go on the record. Do they support this money going to Nancy Pelosi's subway, or will they do the right thing and spend the money on resources for kids who are suffering from school closures because of COVID? Now, I imagine the Speaker would agree with our request, considering students in the Bay Area right in her own backyard are suffering from failing grades and rising depression. And let me set the record straight. Today's Pelosi's payoff bill still won't provide assurances to parents and students that their schools will even reopen. None of the funding has been tied to opening. Some House Republicans have tried to pass on 3 separate occasions to move the more than $60 billion directly to open up the schools. 3 different times the Democrats have defeated it. 95% of the funding in this bill isn't even scheduled to be spent for another year, creating more uncertainty for families. And in fact, less than 9% of the bill will be used to fund public health. Less than 9%. I want to put up a chart so you can get a good idea of how little the Democrat bill is actually going to fight the virus. Here is what 91% of the bill, trillions of hardworking taxpayers' money, is funding. Nancy Pelosi's subway, which was increased by another $40 million while kids are marking the 1-year anniversary of not being in school for a subway just outside her district. That money won't be held up. Blue state bailouts so they can keep their economy shut down. Changing the funding mechanism to reward states that were shut down. Planned Parenthood, universities with massive endowments. Harvard with billions of dollars in endowment will get money in this. But to help the children for depression and anxiety, there's an opportunity to do that. This isn't a relief bill. It takes care of Democrats' political allies, while it fails to deliver for American families. That is why I'll be voting no on the Pelosi payoff bill. We already know what is the best stimulus plan out there. It is to fully reopen our economy. To do that, we need our economy go back to work, back to school, and back to health. But when you spend 91% on paying off your allies, it doesn't do that. We need blue state governors to lift their non-science-based lockdowns. We need schools to reopen, and we need to ramp up vaccine distribution so we can crush this virus. The Democrat bill won't do any of this. And the most unfortunate part of this, we had a history of producing bipartisan bills in a time of crisis. We had a history of working together. But that all changed. Now it's decided something much different.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are just days away from voting on a 2,000-page bill that will very likely cost $4 trillion. A bill that the White House Chief of Staff recently bragged, and let me quote, twice as big in real dollars as the New Deal was. Can you imagine that? Let that sink in. 2,000 pages, $4 trillion, twice as big in real dollars as the New Deal was. Given its size, scope, given its unquestionable impact on American life, the American people deserve an honest, transparent debate about its true cost and content. Yet here we are, and not one member of this House can honestly say they have analyzed, studied, or reviewed it. We know this because the Congressional Budget Office has made it clear that they won't have the final analysis on how much the bill costs until Friday at the earliest. But even without the CBO report, we already have a pretty clear idea that the final price tag will be far more expensive than what Democrats are claiming. Now, according to estimates from the University of Pennsylvania Wharton School, one of the best business schools in the nation, they say that new spending would increase by over $4 trillion. Now, that's twice as much as the Democrats say it will cost. And it's not just the top-line cost. It's the tax increases, too. According to Tax Policy Center, a center-left think tank, 20 to 30% of income families will see their taxes go up in 2022. Now, that directly breaks President Biden's pledge that he wouldn't raise taxes on the middle class. Let me make sure I state that clearly. According to Tax Policy Center, now this is a center-left think tank, says 20 to 30% of middle-income families. These are ones who are already having a hard time because of inflation, who are already going to celebrate the most expensive Thanksgiving in their lifetime, paying gas higher than they've seen, and inflation, to many of them, higher than they've ever had in their own lifetime. But the president promised them he would not raise their taxes. But the Tax Policy Center says 20 to 30% are going to have your taxes raised. The Democrats are trying to pull a bait and switch on the American people. Tell them one thing, but vote on something else. The American people obviously know better than to believe a bill of this size would cost $0. I've listened to the president say it. I think he's on late night TV. Who would possibly say this bill would not cost money? The Wharton School of Business says it's more than $4 trillion. It's only the president who first claimed, if you're middle class, we wouldn't raise your taxes. We know that's not true. Wharton tells us, yeah, it's not true again what the president says. It is going to cost you $4 trillion. So in desperation, Speaker Pelosi is demanding the House vote on this bill, even as we do not know exactly how much it will cost or how it will truly impact our lives. If that sounds familiar to you, it should. You see, it's exactly what Speaker Pelosi did just 10 years ago while trying to pass Obamacare. Remember her famous words? We have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. Well, here we go again. So what's the rush? After all, several of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been very clear. They want to make sure that this bill actually matches up with what the White House says it will. I just watched before we depart, they wanted these same members to pledge and sign a letter that they would vote for whatever this bill said if the others would vote for the infrastructure bill. Could you imagine your constituents looking at you? Not even asking if you read what was in the bill because you pledged to vote for it before you could even read it. Speaker Pelosi is rushing this bill to the floor because once they find out that Build Back Better does nothing to lower gasoline prices, or reduce food prices, or fix our broken supply chain, or stop illegal immigration at the border, doesn't make our streets any safer or our schools better for the children, once they find all that out, they will reject it overwhelmingly. Madam Speaker, I know that many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle understand this. That they truly do not want to vote on this bill because they know it can't be justified. I know, Madam Speaker, that they know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars when inflation just hit a 30-year high, Madam Speaker. They know it just can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars on programs that benefit them politically while hiking taxes on the middle class. They can't, Madam Speaker. They know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars for mass amnesty during the worst border crisis in history. They know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars that will make gasoline even more expensive than it currently is on a 7-year high. Madam Speaker, they know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars to hire 87,000 new IRS agents to spy on any American who spends as little as $28 a day. They know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars to make the labor crisis worse by turning the child tax credit into a welfare without any work requirement. They know it can't be justified to spend trillions of dollars to abandon the Hyde Amendment, allowing for taxpayer-funded abortion on demand. And they know it cannot be justified to spend trillions of dollars to dictate our children's education standards so that Washington has the final say in what our children learn. On the merits, this bill deserves to be defeated. Fundamentally, it is anti-worker, anti-family, anti-jobs, anti-energy, and anti-American. from bank surveillance to bailouts. It takes the problems President Biden and Washington Democrats have created over the past 9 months and makes them much, much worse, Madam Speaker. Its destructive policies should alarm every American. Madam Speaker, Democrats aren't just ignoring what's going on throughout the country. It's worse. They aren't even pretending to listen. And that is the fundamental difference between Democrats and Republicans. Madam Speaker, the Democrats are focused on securing the Speaker's legacy. House Republicans are focused on solving the labor crisis. Democrats are focused on so-called equality. We are focused on quality education. Democrats are focused on payoffs for illegal immigrants. We're focused on protecting the border. Democrats are focused on the Green New Deal. We're focused on lowering the gas prices. Democrats are focused on mandates. Republicans are focused on more freedom. When you look at those differences, it's no wonder that the American people want a change in leadership. You know, Madam Speaker, just this morning, a Democrat in the Texas House of Representatives changed parties. This comes just 2 weeks after voters from Virginia to Seattle rejected the radical Democrats and voted to return to common sense. Madam Speaker, just last Tuesday, it wasn't just Virginia. Madam Speaker, you understand this very well, I know, that Joe Biden won Virginia by 10 points. He won New Jersey by 16. But Madam Speaker, on that night, it wasn't just Virginia that flipped. The races in New York, the races, Madam Speaker, in your own state, in Minneapolis, in Seattle, for the city attorney. And Madam Speaker, there were good news and bad news that night. In New Jersey, the good news for many people across this country was a Republican truck driver with less than $200 defeated the second most powerful elected position in New Jersey, the Democrat Senate president. That was the good news. The bad news, Madam Speaker, in this new Biden America, we just lost another truck driver when we need so much more help. It's not just a message, it's a mandate. Not for left versus right, but for right versus wrong. My question is, will Washington Democrats listen? So far, Madam Speaker, that answer is no. They're focusing on themselves and on the demands of Speaker Pelosi. Madam Speaker, I know today the longest-serving Democrat in the Senate announced retirement. I don't know what plans Speaker Pelosi has. I know she's been to Europe 3 times in the last 3 months. I don't know if she plans on staying longer. I know in her press conference that she said this will be the culmination of her career. Maybe that's why she's pushing so hard for people to vote on a bill that costs $4 trillion, that breaks the promises of President Biden before anybody could actually read it or analyze it. I just think that's wrong. But we have a chance this week to correct course and save America. Madam Speaker, so many Americans, independents, Democrats, and Republicans went to the polls last Tuesday. It wasn't a little pocket, one place said one thing and one said another. It was overwhelmingly resounding, a rejection of the current policies of this majority. You know, Madam Speaker, this one-party rule of Washington in 1 year has given us not just inflation, but rising gasoline prices, a labor crisis, a supply chain crisis, chaos, crime, and worst of all, failure. As we sit here today, Madam Speaker, Russia brings thousands of their military to the border of Ukraine. They feel empowered because they're able to have a pipeline that President Biden okayed, but America was denied. We watch China pressure Taiwan even further. Madam Speaker, we still have Americans stuck in Afghanistan. Madam Speaker, it's just a little week away from Thanksgiving, when thousands of millions of Americans will gather together But those events may be smaller because they may not afford the gas to drive to see their family. They might not be able to afford the most expensive Thanksgiving dinner they've ever had. They're looking to Washington to do better. Madam Speaker, the worst thing possibly could do is not to listen to them. They have spoke loud, they have spoke clearly that the path that we on is wrong. They cannot afford it, they cannot accept it, and they expect us to do better. But an idea to rush a bill this large and not have any analysis, to think the American people won't understand it. They've watched what's happened this year under one-party rule. And on Tuesday, they said that will change. I just hope, Madam Speaker, that this body listens, waits for the report, because they will not be able to justify a yes vote for it. America cannot afford it. For the good of the country, let's take a hold of it. Let's defeat this bill. With that, Madam Speaker, I'll yield back.